You were promised highways of chrome and sky, but instead, America sits gridlocked in mediocrity. The truth is, Ford once engineered machines so advanced they could have made rivals obsolete. Jet turbine monsters, mid-engine missiles, even nuclear sedans. But those projects became denied assets, buried by boardroom caution and erased from history. Why would a nation discard vehicles with 450 horsepower dyno sheets, glass canopy wagons, and reactor blueprints? Was it fear or something deeper, an industrial betrayal hiding in cold memos and scrapped dreams? Today, the classified archive opens. Are you ready to confront the timeline they stole from you? Ford's Special Projects division didn't just sketch dreams, they built them in steel and glass. The Aurora wagon, conceived in 1962, was never a fantasy. It was a machine engineered for American families who demanded more than mediocrity. Picture a station wagon with 200 cubic feet of cargo volume, enough to swallow every suitcase, every cooler, every last hope of a cross-country road trip. The Aurora's glass canopy arched from pillar to pillar, flooding the cabin with daylight. Aluminum chassis rails carried the weight with military precision, delivering a 42% front bias, calculated for stability at speed and safety in a crash. This was not a styling exercise. This was a functional prototype built to command the new highways of the interstate era. But in the end, the Aurora was too advanced for its own good. Production engineering ran the numbers. Every glass canopy, every unique panel, every untested assembly line fixture, each one a line item on a cost sheet. The sum was $50 million in new tooling, at a time when Ford's annual profit margins were under siege. That figure wasn't just a budget overrun, it was a declaration of war on the old guard. Dealers balked. The boardroom braced for impact. On March 14, 1963, the verdict arrived. The memo reads, "Aurora program terminated. Tooling cost exceeds projected return. Cease all further development effective immediately." No signatures, no celebration, just a cold directive, typed, stamped, filed away. The Aurora vanished from the production schedule, erased by a single sheet of corporate ordinance. The Falcon wagon rolled into showrooms instead, slab-sided, anonymous, utterly forgettable. The American road trip never got its flagship, and the engineers who built the Aurora learned a lesson they would carry for the rest of their careers. No amount of innovation could survive the crosshairs of a cost accountant. The Shelby EXP, codenamed the Green Hornet, was not built to blend in. Conceived in 1968, this Mustang-based experiment carried a 450 horsepower V8 with electronic fuel injection. A system so advanced, Ford's own dyno sheets flagged it as a threat to the entire production line. The hatchback body, a first for the Mustang, delivered cargo access no rival could match. Weight distribution was recalibrated for ballistic launches off the line. Yet the Green Hornet was denied clearance. Market analysts called it a niche outlier. Development budgets, already strained by new safety mandates, left no room for a hand-built, fuel-injected flagship. The verdict was simple. Too radical for the showroom, too expensive for mass production. The Green Hornet was returned to storage, its engine notes silenced by a memo, its silhouette erased by the accountants. The Mustang RSX followed a decade later, a rally-bred weapon designed for the oil crisis era. It featured all-wheel drive, a turbocharged 2.3-liter power plant, and 300 horsepower on tap. Ford's engineers ran the numbers. This machine could have rewritten the rules for American performance, bringing European rally dominance to Detroit's doorstep. But a 1978 internal memo flagged a critical vulnerability: oil supply risk. The RSX's projected fuel consumption clashed with a market bracing for rationing and price spikes. Magazine hype could not overcome the board's fear of another energy shock. The RSX was terminated before the first production run. The all-wheel drive system was boxed and shelved. The turbo never saw public roads. Both the EXP and the RSX were denied for the same reason. They dared to leap ahead, but Ford command flinched. The result was a repeating pattern. Styling and engineering miracles were cut down before they could threaten the status quo. The production Mustangs that followed were shadows of these prototypes, stripped of their asymmetric advantage. The archive holds their specs, but the roads never did. The red Mark II prototype was not a rumor. It was a weapon, engineered in the open, then vanished without a trace. In 1967, Ford's Special Projects Division handed Carcraft a blank check and a mandate: build a Mustang that could run with the Ferraris. The result was a mid-engine fiberglass-bodied machine, Boss 429 V8 mounted behind the seats, longitudinal, driving the rear wheels through a C6 automatic transmission. The chassis was balanced for attack, 40% front, 60% rear. Every ounce of mass was calculated for ballistic cornering. Simulations ran at Monza. The numbers came back: 1 minute, 54.7 seconds, faster than a Ferrari 275 GTB on period tires. The engineers knew what this meant. Ford had a prototype that could have rewritten the rules for American muscle and European grand touring alike. The lap time printout was stamped "confidential" and locked in the archive. A provenance researcher, Jim Kreutz, spent decades tracing the Mark II's chain of custody. The red car toured auto shows, engineering fairs, and parades, always under watch, never left unsupervised. Last confirmed sighting, Carcraft, May 1969, caught in a grainy video. After that, the trail goes cold. No shipping manifest, no museum transfer, no scrap order. The feasibility mule and a white racing development car were both crushed, their destruction recorded, but the red Mark II simply disappeared. Ford Command did not leave fingerprints. The only evidence is a memo that reads, "Terminated at 0900 hours. No signatures, no explanations, only the directive." Carcraft was liquidated in 1970. Inventory records are missing. Auction catalogs yield nothing. Kreutz contacted ex-employees, archivists, even state business offices. No bill of sale, no VIN crosswalk, no private registry match. The car is a phantom limb. Detroit rumors persist of a barn, a locked garage, an X-number chassis plate that does not exist in any public database. This was not an accident. The Mark II was too advanced, too threatening. It would have forced a realignment of the Mustang's DNA, a mid-engine Ferrari beating flagship. Instead, the production Mustang stayed front-engined, safe, and familiar. The Mark II was erased not by physics, but by corporate erasure. The engineers lost their proof of superiority. The world lost a machine that was never supposed to be forgotten. The archive holds the lap time and the memo. The car itself is missing. The Ferguson all-wheel drive Mustang began as a classified exercise in traction superiority. Ford shipped a handful of V8 Mustangs to England, where Harry Ferguson's engineers grafted their torque-splitting transfer case and viscous couplings onto Dearborn's fastback frame. The result was a Mustang capable of ballistic launches on wet pavement. It posted 12% faster lap times in rain at Silverstone in 1968, but the price for that grip was weight. 200 pounds of added hardware dulled the car's reflexes. The cost sheet landed on the desk in Dearborn. It called for $4,200 per unit above standard, a premium that would have bankrupted the Mustang's mass market appeal. The accountants saw a science project, not a sales weapon. The all-wheel drive Mustang was mothballed before the press ever caught wind. The Ferguson system was boxed up and shipped back across the Atlantic, and the American muscle car remained chained to two driven wheels, its asymmetric advantage denied by a balance sheet. Meanwhile, in the desert outside Los Angeles, Shelby American built something even more dangerous, the quarter horse. This was not a car for the cautious. It combined the Boss 429's ballistic power plant rated at 500 horsepower with a Shelby-tuned chassis and a Mercury Cougar interior. The quarter horse was engineered to be an affordable Grand Tourer flagship, a street-legal warhead priced just under $4,000. Test mules ran the quarter mile in under 12 seconds, faster than any production Ford. But the economic climate was turning. By 1970, insurance premiums for high-output muscle cars had doubled. Federal emissions mandates were tightening their grip. Ford Command reviewed the quarter horse's final build sheet and saw a liability, not an asset. The program was terminated before launch. Only a handful of prototypes survived, each one a ghost in the archive, a reminder of what Detroit was capable of when it was not afraid of its own shadow. Both the all-wheel drive Mustang and the quarter horse represent a spectrum of tactical ingenuity, two solutions to the same challenge: how to deliver command-level performance to the public. One attacked the road with relentless grip, the other with overwhelming force. Both were scrubbed not by engineering failure, but by a boardroom unwilling to risk superiority. The production Mustang that emerged in their place was safer, slower, and strategically neutered. The archive holds their specs and their cost sheets, but the roads never felt their full potential. Nucleon was born in the crucible of atomic ambition. Ford Special Projects Desk, 1957. The proposal was a passenger car powered not by gasoline, but by a uranium reactor. No carburetor, no fuel tank. Instead, a reactor core sealed in the rear, a self-contained fission capsule promising 5,000 miles between swaps. The blueprints called for a cab-forward cockpit to push the driver as far from the reactor as possible. Aluminum panels, retractable bumpers, tail fins for stability. The technical dossier reads like a warning. Radiation shielding alone would require 2,000, 4,000, even 6,000 pounds of lead or tungsten. Every calculation forced the mass higher. The smallest plausible shield, just enough to keep the crew alive, tipped the scales past 10,000 pounds curb weight. On paper, the Nucleon was a land battleship, not a sedan. Engineers ran dose rate tables. Even with depleted uranium and layered lead, neutron flux at the cabin edge exceeded occupational limits by an order of magnitude. Crash scenarios turned catastrophic. One collision could scatter radioactive debris for miles. Tire loads ballooned. The balance sheet for physics was non-negotiable. The reactor's fury could not be caged by the 1950s metallurgy. Every attempt to shrink the shielding only amplified the risk. The car's center of gravity shifted rearward, far beyond safe handling thresholds. The wheelbase, barely 6 feet, could not counter the mass. Handling, acceleration, and braking all failed the most generous safety models. Correspondence with the Atomic Energy Commission arrived in the spring of 1958. No explicit ban, just a wall of regulatory silence. Civilian reactors were a legal vacuum. Insurance underwriters never issued a policy. There was no actuarial table for fission-powered traffic accidents. The risk was self-evident. One internal note, unsigned, summed it up. No indemnity, no coverage, not insurable. The Nucleon was not denied by a boardroom vote. It was terminated by the laws of physics, enforced by regulatory inertia and actuarial fear. The prototype never advanced past a scale model. The dream of atomic propulsion collapsed under the weight of its own shielding. The archive holds the blueprints, the shielding estimates, the unanswered letters. The Nucleon remains a phantom limb, proof that American engineering once dared to harness the atom, only to be stopped by the unbreakable wall of reality. The Volante dossier opens with the promise of flight, an American roadster engineered not just for highways, but for the sky itself. Ford's Special Projects team, working under a cloak of Cold War secrecy, set out to build a machine that could outpace traffic by leaving it behind. The Volante's blueprint called for a gas turbine power plant, integrated intake ducts, and a fuselage-grade chassis. But the enemy was not rival automakers. It was the physics of jet propulsion. Turbine inlet temperatures reached 1,000 degrees Celsius. Exhaust routing became a nightmare, each foot of ducting threatening to melt bodywork or ignite asphalt. The cockpit was a heat trap, the shielding insufficient. Federal Aviation Administration consultants reviewed the design and flagged a fatal flaw. There was no emergency landing protocol, no way to certify a flying car with turbine exhaust streaming inches from civilian traffic. The Volante was grounded by the laws of thermodynamics and the iron grip of federal regulators. Parallel to the Volante, Ford's land-based turbine project pressed forward. In Dearborn's test bays, the Sea Pearl and the Thunderbird turbine prototypes ran up to speed. The turbines delivered smooth, vibrationless thrust, industrial-grade torque at 40,000 revolutions per minute, with a spool-up delay of 15 seconds from idle to full power. On paper, these machines could cruise at highway velocity with aircraft like Calm, but on the street, the numbers betrayed them. Thermal efficiency peaked at 28%, barely half that of a contemporary V8. Fuel consumption soared. Emissions testing revealed nitrogen oxide output 10 times above the new federal limits. And in city driving, the lag between throttle and response left drivers stranded at intersections, waiting for the turbine to spool while traffic closed in. The engineering team logged every failure, every overheated bearing, every failed emissions test. The archive holds Society of Automotive Engineers papers detailing the turbine's thermal signature, 1,000-degree inlets, exhaust plumes that could blister paint at 5 yards. October 1973 delivered the final blow. The oil embargo sent prices skyrocketing and triggered a board-level review of every experimental propulsion program. Within 30 days, Ford Command issued a blanket suspension. All turbine development was to be halted, effective immediately. The project engineers received the order in silence. The prototypes were rolled into storage, their engines purged, their blueprints sealed. The Volante's fuselage and the turbine sedans became phantom limbs, machines that had tasted the future only to be amputated by converging walls of physics, regulation, and economic shock. The archive preserves their specs, their memos, and their silence. Today, automotive ambition is measured in efficiency and compliance. The iron will that once aimed for nuclear propulsion is now corralled by regulation and risk aversion. As global competitors push boundaries in electric, autonomous, and aerospace crossover, America faces a new test of ingenuity. The question is no longer what we built, but if we still dare. History waits for the next denied asset or the next breakthrough. Share your thoughts below.